Okay, it's February the 21st, Saturday morning. This is Van Life update number 52. And I thought this morning we'd take a look at a video about subflooring. Won't that be exciting? Because I will be installing a subfloor in my van. And I really like this YouTuber. She's really good. She explains everything so well. The only drawback is that she's installing her subfloor on a ProMaster van, where I'll be doing mine on a Ford Transit. But the ideas are the same. She's really got some good ideas here, so let's watch her together.
Welcome to my channel. My name is Lauren, and I'm self-converting my Ram ProMaster to live, travel, and work in full-time on the road. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I installed my subfloor. Before getting started with the install, I wanted to make two quick call outs. First one being to check the timeline of this video for time codes to jump around to different sections, and to also check the description box below for affiliate links to products and tools I used. With that, let's get started. The very first step of doing your subfloor is making a template out of cardboard. I have seen people try to do this with paper before. I just feel like it leaves a lot more room.
This is a good idea in terms of making a template. She's going to cut hers out of cardboard. I've seen other people take a mat out of the floor of the van if it's still there. The factory installed mat will just come out, and you can use the floor mat that comes with the van as the template. So there's various ways to go about doing it. Now, I've never seen her do this. She's going to use a method that she came up with that I thought's a pretty good idea.
So I'm going to stick to stenciling onto my cardboard. Once I've gone through, cut this, tape pieces together, and have my floor layout, I am going to transfer this template onto my plywood to cut it for the final subfloor.
I don't know why she's out of sync. I apologize for that. For some reason, I'm showing this isn't being streamed. I actually recorded the video and I'm using that, but her voice seems to be a little bit out of sync, so I apologize for that. But look at this technique she's going to use to draw the template. So I took a scrap piece of wood, drilled a hole in the end of it to stick a pencil in. I cut the eraser side out and put the ink side in. This is going to be what's going against your wall when you're moving the stick. And then again, I found the biggest gap between the wall and the cardboard and marked that on my wood. Then I went ahead and drilled a hole in for another pencil to go into. So this pencil is in line with this pencil. So as I'm going along the wall, pushing this up against the wall, this is going to trace. So this lip on the back of the van, where the back two doors are, is where I'm planning on stopping my subfloor and my final floor. So this is where I'm going to line the cardboard piece up against, is that strip right there and this wheel well. I'm going to go ahead and tape it down just so it doesn't move when I'm tracing. Pretty good idea.
As you can see, it fits beautifully. Nice, perfect, and snugged in all the places. The reason I did it on this bigger piece of cardboard is because this is exactly half the distance between both of my walls. This is running on the center line. When you're doing your subfloor and your final floor, you want to find the center line of your van and work off of that. So for me, that's the center of this way down.
I've heard other builders say that as well, that you want to find the center line of the van and use that center line to do your measurements to the outer walls as you work your way up to the van. And this comes in handy for the entire install, not just for the subfloor. So you always want to work off that center line so that everything is in balance, perpendicular, and the angles and everything are correct, and all the corners and everything are correct. You want to work off that center line.
Now, if you have a Ram ProMaster that you're building in, the nice thing is that they say that the wheel wells are symmetrical. So theoretically, if I were to take this template and flip it, it should be exactly the same for this other side. So let's try that theory. And there you have it. Fits like a glove. So I got my back two templates all made out. So I'm going to probably retrace this one onto another template so then I can have two pieces taped them together and have one.
Geez, I hope the Ford Transit is symmetrical. Sure would save a lot of work.
This back half, so on this passenger side wall, right next to the wheel well, I just have to account for this little half circle, and then two little nooks right here that come out, so just a little indent. So instead of going through and stenciling like I was starting to do, and then having a straight line all the way down and cutting out all this cardboard, I've decided to just make it easier on myself and just create this half circle and tape it to this cardboard.
Yeah, there's going to be little nooks and crannies on the floor of the van that are going to have to be dealt with. So the Ford Transit's going to be a little bit different than this ProMaster, but the idea here is to get a template that nudges up against the wall so that you can transfer the template over to your plywood subfloor. That's basically what she's doing, is building out this
Penciled
template.
and cut out this front section. We're gonna test that theory again with Ram ProMaster vans being symmetrical. And it does. So that'll help save you one more step of having to stencil it again. Just trace this onto another cardboard and you're good to go. Okay, so once you have your cardboard template traced out, cut, and taped together as one giant sheet, now it's time to transfer that onto your plywood. I am using a 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood for my subfloor.
She goes on to say that when she
For my subfloor.
when she was doing this 3 years ago, the Baltic birchwood is sourced out of Russia, and that there was some problems going on with the Russia market back then, and then Baltic birchwood was hard to get. So I don't know how that stands now. I don't know if that's still a problem or not, but I hear that Baltic birchwood is pretty common and pretty popular to do your build out with. So I know a lot of YouTubers that I've seen building subfloors and other parts of the van, they use this birch plywood. The 1/2-inch is pretty good because you'll notice it's got 9 layers, pretty strong.
Now, if anyone is aware, Baltic birch is going to be impossible to get from here on out pretty much because...
I hope that's not a problem now.
No. After tracing the cardboard template onto the plywood, I went back to my van
Need
to
to check
take
out the
3
Home
key
Depot and see if
I
the
measured the
Baltic
width behind the
birchwood's
wheel
available.
wells, in between the wheel wells, and in front of the wheel wells to cross-reference it on my plywood before cutting, just to make sure everything transferred correctly.
Yeah, it's always good to measure. What's the old saying? Measure twice, cut once, or measure 3 times and cut once. So you want to be sure and measure everything more than once. Make sure everything is right before you do your cut.
I also did this for the width of the front 2 boards as well. So I'm using 4x8 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood for my subfloor. I'm using 3 of them. The widest part of my van in the back is 6 feet. The longest lengthwise is 12 feet. I am going to be cutting my plywood with a jigsaw for the corners and edges that I need to get, and then also a skill saw to cut off any large pieces before I go ahead and...
Okay, so now she's going to cut out the template into pieces and lay it in.
Remember, it's best to cut away a little at a time because once you cut off a piece, you can't add it back to the plywood. So if you have to make multiple small cuts and adjust it, it's better than making a big cut at first and messing up the entire piece of plywood. One other thing that I want to call out is something that I saw on Humble Road's YouTube video about the Ram ProMasters. In the very, very back, there is a slight lip right here on both sides that will make your plywood slightly raised. So I'm going to try and show you as a visual with this straight edge. I have the straight edge set across all these high point ribs going all the way across. You will see as I start to push this forward, and as soon as it hits...
Isn't that weird how vans, you got to look at that van floor because these van manufacturers don't make vans to be built out for RVers and those of us who want to live in them. So there's going to be little issues that we have to deal with, and the idea is to keep that subfloor flat. You've got to look for any little problems that may cause you to not have a flat level floor. Notice how the gap gets wider as it goes toward the end. So she has to deal with these two problems in the rear of the ProMaster.
Installed tie downs on my van floor so my boards can sit flat on the road.
Now she's going to remove the custom, or not the custom, the tie downs that come with the van. As part of the van, these tie downs, I think there's 6 or 8 of them. She'll have to remove those.
Once the factory installed tie downs are removed, you're gonna have this hole now. So you're gonna want to fill that somehow. There's a couple different ways that you can go about this. Some people will fill this with caulking or a putty and just completely seal it off. Others will use this hole to install and screw their subfloor down and into this hole to hold down the subfloor. Personally, I'm going to use these M8 bolts and put it into the hole, and this is actually going to sit flush to the van floor, so it's not going to lift up the wood or anything like that. So that is how I'm going to seal off that hole, so that if down the road I do want to use these holes for anything, I can, and I haven't closed off that option completely. My van is a Ram ProMaster 159-inch wheelbase high top, so I have 8 tie downs on the floor, so 1 there on that side of the wheel.
So there's 8 tie downs that she's having to remove.
Number 1 could be gluing. You could put glue on the high.
Okay, now she's
fastening down.
now she's going to talk about the different ways that you can apply the subfloor, and she evidently is just going to let it float. She doesn't want to drill holes to screw it in. She doesn't want to lay glue. So I think she's just going to let it float.
On your subfloor, I just want to go over a couple of options. Number 1 could be gluing. You could put glue on the high point of the ribs and stick the plywood on top of that and let that glue hold your floor down. Second option would be screwing it down. So using those 8 self-installed tie-down holes that I filled with my M8 bolts, you can use those holes to screw up through the plywood and then screw the plywood down into that with a countersink so it's flush to the plywood. And you're going to have to do and also screw in other holes in your van, because those 8 are just around the perimeter and they aren't evenly spaced out enough that would hit all the points on the plywood necessary to hold it down. So you might have to go ahead and screw even more holes into your van. Reason I'm not doing that is because I don't really want to drill more holes into the floor of my van, which can potentially lead to rust down the road. I'm just very paranoid about rust. My last option is just using the weight of my build to hold down the subfloor. So I'm gonna have furniture going on top of all of this and personal possessions. Hopefully that weight will be enough to hold down this plywood. People often ask me like, okay, well, aren't you afraid if you get in a car crash and whatnot that the plywood's gonna come up? I would be if there wasn't furniture on top of it. The
only thing that concerns me about the install of the subfloor is the squeaking. I want to avoid any squeaks. And I don't know, she cuts this subfloor awful close to the edge of the walls of the van, and I'm afraid as you travel and hit the road that there's going to be some squeakage. And I don't know if a floating subfloor, I don't know what are some ways that you can avoid the squeaking. Because if you screw it in solid, it's not going to squeak. But then again, if you install the floor up so close to the walls, whenever that subfloor moves or shifts while you're traveling, you may get some squeaks. I don't know.
So adding those furring strips would actually take away from my height space. So
some people install furring strips down the floor and then attach the subfloor on top of those plywood furring strips, which is another way to do it. But that takes more height away from the inside of the van, and if you want to be able to stand up inside the van itself, then you may need to think about that. I'm 6'1", so I'm gonna, being a little bit tall, I'm gonna have to consider that as I install that subfloor. How much height am I gonna have?
Now I'm sanding the boards to clean up the edges where I cut. After sanding and before painting, Brush and wipe down the boards free of any sawdust and loose fibers.
Since my subfloor is likely to
Okay, but she's going to seal it, water seal it, so that condensation and any moisture will not rot the wood subfloor. It's going to cover that pretty good. Sealant.
care, this is my subfloor. I'm never going to see it. I'm going to be covering up with vinyl planks when everything is said and done with, so I'm not too worried about it, but you can get clear if you want it. While my subfloor is drying, I wanted to take this time to talk about subfloor insulation. I have been dead set on insulating my van floor. I knew exactly how I wanted to do it, and then recently I came to the realization that it wasn't going to be an effective approach for me. The main reason I have decided not to insulate my subfloor is because of my height. I am 6 foot tall and came to the realization that I only have about 2 inches to spare for my ceiling and my floor combined in order for me to be able to stand upright in my van and live comfortably. Something that helped me to accept this decision was the reminder that heat rises and cold air falls. So no matter what, your floor is always going to be slightly colder than the upper air is. So to combat this, I can do things like laying down a rug, wearing slippers, socks, turning on my heater that I'm going to be installing, and traveling to warmer climates. Also, when making this decision, I reached out to fellow van lifers and professional builders and got their insight into insulating the subfloor. And from what I've heard from them, a lot of people are saying that they only notice a marginal difference between insulating the subfloor and not insulating the subfloor. So that also helped me feel more comfortable with this decision. I will, however, still be insulating my ceiling, my walls, and my doors to help with climate control. Now, since I was planning on doing insulation on my subfloor from the start, I have done tons of research on how I would approach this. So I'm going to do a future video going over different
Insulation. She's going to go a little easy on the insulation itself. And so it's interesting because since heat does rise, it's going to be a little bit cooler. And some people I've seen lay insulation under the subfloor, and evidently she's deciding not to do it because she's trying to save as much of her height, interior height, as possible. So I'm not so sure. I don't know what to do about that. I've seen all different kinds of insulation put down there as well. So that's the thing about building out a van. Everyone is different. Everyone has their own way of doing it. And you can watch a dozen videos of YouTubers putting in subfloors in their van. They all have sort of a different slant. So that will be the first thing I do after purchasing the van, is laying in that subfloor. Go out and have a good day. Today's been Van Life update number 52. We will see you tomorrow. Go out and have a good day.